Okay, I'm just highly curious. How many of you knew that song? I mean, get some hands here. Okay, all right. Yeah, it was obvious to me that this group had not sung that song before. And I was just sitting there, and I was singing, and I was doing my little bass part, and well, support, and I was like, there is nobody around me singing that part. So anyway, that's just interesting. When I was your age, we sang that song all the time, but that was years ago. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting. I want to do something a little different this morning. We're not on this thing about asking for a friend. I want to talk about something else this morning. This is if you don't know, that's a sundial. These are ways that people used to keep time. Now, I'm assuming all of you either changed your clock or it changed itself last night. And I was thinking, back in the days of sundials, I don't know that they really did daylight savings time. I don't know, maybe you'd move it to the other side of the yard. I don't know how that would work. And then we moved up to where we had hourglasses. And thinking about that, even that doesn't really measure time exactly, does it? But we were kind of getting on the right track with that. And then we came up with this great invention called a clock. And then I was looking at that image when I was getting this lesson together, thinking, okay, clock. Do y'all still know how to use like numbers on a clock, or do you only use like digital clocks? You can still do numbers? Okay, I wasn't sure. But, you learned it was a quarter till 12, and you knew what that was. That was 15 till, and I didn't know how people actually did that. So then we came along with these digital clocks, and I don't know, when did these things come out? Anybody have a knowledge of when we really started using digital clocks? I know we had them back in my day, but again, that's been a little while ago. And then we decided, we have watches, right? And now, how many of you, and just a curious question, you don't, just kind of impromptu, how many of you still wear a watch? How many people still wear a watch? Okay, I got my watch on. So, but not a regular watch, it's a smart watch, right? So, that's kind of, then I got to thinking, probably this is the way most people keep time now. How many of you use a phone to keep time? You just look at the phone. If your phone ever goes dead, you have no idea what time it is, and you can't tell time by the sun, which I can't either, so it's okay. Time, and you start trying to measure time. And even that's relative, right? I mean, when you would have been sitting on this row, okay? You'd have been sitting on this row. And somebody said that somebody's 60 years old. What would you have thought? Oh, man, 60 years old, that is old. Suddenly, that doesn't seem so old. It seems like it's just kind of young. And then I hear somebody, they're 90 years old, and I think, well, that sounds kind of old. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, 90 years old, 30 years, I'll be 90 almost. It's like, okay, that's not too old either, because 30 years doesn't seem like very far, does it? And you start trying to figure out, well, how do you really measure time? How do you try to figure out how much time you have? And then, I don't know if you've been down this hallway at the back of the auditorium on the right. But if you go down that hallway, go all the way to the end, and you look on the right, Cheryl has this wonderful thing set up, and it says, "For this child I have prayed." And she has these boxes that have beads in them. And the first time I saw it, it kind of shocked me when I thought about what she was representing. Birth, you have, I know y'all can't see this real well, but birth, you have 936 weeks to spend with your child between birth and the time they turn 18 years old. 936 weeks. If you're sitting on this part of the auditorium, you think, man, that is a long time. If you're sitting on my perspective of 930 weeks, it's like, wow, that's not very much time, is it? So if your child's already kindergarten to first grade, if you divide that right in the middle, you have 624 weeks left. And then you start looking down the wall, second and third grade, 520 weeks. You notice how there are fewer beads in there? And fourth and fifth, 416 weeks. And sixth and seventh, it's 312 weeks, and it's starting to look empty. And 8th and 9th grade, only 208 weeks left. And then 10th and 11th grade, 104 weeks. And then you get to 12th grade when they're getting ready to graduate, and you have 52 weeks to influence your child, to teach them about God, to show them the things that are important. And all of a sudden you look at that, and I don't know where you are on that scale from birth to 12th grade, and then you look at somebody like me, and I don't even have any beads left in my little container. They're all gone because I've already had that time. And Cheryl got me thinking about other things, and so then I started thinking about time. And she has on the wall, for this child I prayed. And that verse is from 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 27. It's about Hannah praying for Samuel. For this child I prayed, and the Lord has granted me my petition that I made to him. And you start asking, what petitions are we making for our children? I have to be very honest. You know the one thing I miss most about children's church? Not doing children's church. I used to do children's church when we were way back at West Huntsville years and years ago. You learn everything about parents in children's church, by the way. But the younger the grade you teach, the more things you find out about the parents. Just so you parents know, you know, because you'd be teaching we used to teach the 4 and 5 year olds, and you'd sit down with the 4 and 5 year olds, and they would look and say, "Mom and Dad had a fight on the way to church this morning." It's like, cool. No, don't tell me what it was about. All right. So for this child, I have prayed, and He's granted me my petition that I made to Him. And the question is, what kind of petitions are we making for our children? And I just don't mean our physical children. I mean our spiritual children. So I'm just going to do a little impromptu survey. Okay. How many of you in this auditorium are less than 15 years old? Less than 15. Less than 16. Less than 16. So I was here when you were born. And you're not my physical children, but you're my spiritual children, because I love you, and I've seen you, and I've watched you mature, and I've watched you grow up. Deuteronomy chapter 11. Be careful, or you will be enticed to turn away and worship other gods and bow down to them. Do you get the warning there? Enticed and turn away to serve other gods? Then the Lord's anger will burn against you, and He will shut the heavens so that it will not rain, and the ground will yield no produce, and you will soon perish from the good land the Lord your God is giving you. Fix these words of mine in your hearts and minds, and tie them as symbols on your hands, and bind them on your foreheads. And by the way, you don't need to tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. You can hit the little play button on the app that Shaw was talking about today. And I was talking to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they're talking, man, I just can't find time to read the Bible. And I said, do you drive to work? You know, like, yeah, I drive to work. How long does it take you to drive to work? Well, it's about 30 minutes. So about 30 minutes there and 30 minutes back. That's an hour a day, right? They said, yeah. I said, what do you do in that hour that you're driving? Well, I don't know. I'll turn on the radio. I said, do you have the Bible app on your phone? And they said, yeah, that's a cool app. And I said, you ever thought about hitting read? It's a nice little button on there. And it says read. Guess what happens when you hit the read button? It reads. Isn't that cool the way they do that? And so I said, if you don't have time to read, what if you listen for an hour, 30 minutes on the way to work, 30 minutes on the way back? And they were like, well, I'll try that. I got to check with them, see how it's going, make sure they hit the read button. I haven't talked to them since then. You don't have to tie them as symbols, but tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Teach them to your children, talking about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road and when you lie down and when you get up. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates so that your days and the days of your children may be many in the land the Lord your God swore to give to your forefathers, as many as the days that the heavens are above the earth. Talk about them. And how do we keep them safe? So Cheryl got me thinking. So I got 18 years, right? That's 936 weeks. Now I know all of my math here is not absolutely perfect. I didn't figure in leap years, and I didn't do some other stuff, okay? This is just kind of an approximation. So if you're big in statistics, I know that you're going to find errors in this, and it's all okay, just generalities. That'd be 936 weeks, which is 6,552 days. So 6,552 days is 157,248 hours. Okay, that looks good, right? But I have to sleep. So I figured that we would sleep 8 hours a night. I know that's a real approximation because none of you guys sleep 8 hours a night. But you should sleep 10 hours a night, by the way, if you want to stay physically and mentally sharp at your age. But you don't. But you should. Okay, 10 hours of sleep a night. That would leave me 105,120 available hours. Those are waking hours that I can do something. So Cheryl got me thinking about that, and I thought, well, what do our kids do in their 105,120 waking hours from the time they're born until they're 18? And I thought, well, you know, church is going to be a huge part of that, right? If you worship for 1 hour a week, which means you only come to Sunday morning worship. Sunday morning worship is all you come to. And you come every Sunday, you never miss. Never miss. Do you realize of your waking hours, you've spent less than 1% of your waking hours in worship? Less than 1%, 0.9. I know it's close to 1, but it's still less than 1, right? So we'll round it up. We'll say 1%, right? We're generous. 1%. 1% of your waking hours spent in worship to God. All of a sudden, Sunday seems like I ought to be able to make time for 1%. I'm just thinking 1%. Just 1%. But I know what you're thinking. Well, Greg, I know, but that's Sunday morning, right? And then we have Wednesday night, which I know we're in COVID, so we still don't have Wednesday night. But best case scenario, we'll have Sunday morning. Oh, and they'll come to Bible class, right? So we'll have Sunday morning Bible class. We'll have Sunday morning worship. Then we'll have Wednesday night, you know, and then we have a youth minister. So you do an event. So usually the event tonight's 2 hours, right? So I mean, just for the sake of being very generous, I said we were going to do a 2-hour event every week, right? Which we don't do one every week, maybe every other week. But if you put all of that together, I've got 5 hours, right? 5 hours. That's 4,680 hours. That sounds like a lot. Until you put it on a pie graph. And all of a sudden it doesn't look like very much, does it? 4%. That's if you're Sunday morning class, Sunday morning worship, Wednesday night, and 2-hour youth activity every week. And we're teaching our children spiritual truths and how to trust in God, how to use their lives in serving God. And if we say church is going to take care of all of that, then we get 4% of their waking hours to take care of it. And I'm just telling you, if you're thinking church is going to take care of it, it's not enough. It's not enough. Can't be just the church's responsibility, can it? So I thought, well, I wonder how much time we spend in school. Well, you might not have, but most people do. All right, so average 7.03 hours. So I don't know. I didn't know how to come up with this, so sorry about that, Brad. I love you, brother. Me and dog, we're like this. So this is from the National Center of Education Statistics. So I don't know if they're right or not, but I had to use somebody, so I used the National Center for Education Statistics for the state of Tennessee, and it said that an average school hour was 7.03 hours. I don't know how they came up with that, but that's what I used. And the average school year is 180 days. So that means every year I spend 1,260 hours in school for a total of 22,777 hours. Oh, it's a pretty big slice of the pie. Not huge, but it's bigger, isn't it? You know, I kind of took out the church slice of the pie there, but that's kind of a really small part of the pie, isn't it? 4,680 hours compared to 27,777 hours. Oh, but wait a minute. That doesn't include a lot of stuff in that number, does it? It doesn't include riding the bus to school and back. Ooh, I don't know how many hours that is. But I'm assuming it's a little bit, right? It doesn't include extracurricular activities. It doesn't include ball practice. It doesn't include band practice. It doesn't include whatever dance recitals, whatever people do, okay? And I've been to dance recitals and ball games and all kind of things. But when you start comparing those two numbers, The only thing that became very apparent to me is that school gets slightly 5 times more time than church does. You think it matters what we're teaching in our schools? You think it matters the kind of language that our kids are picking up in the schools? You think it matters what their friends are like and who they hang around and who they're with? Because it does. You think it matters the worldview that our school is teaching? How they interpret history? Or how they teach values or morals or what is important or how you make wise decisions in the world? Because education affects our children. And this is not a statement about any type of education or whatever education process you're in, they have a tremendous amount of influence over your children. In fact, if you just go by time, they have 5 times more input over your children than the church does, if we're just measuring time that we're together. So things like evolution versus creationism or a humanistic way of life or how you view life or how you make wise decisions, all of those come into play. So I got 4,680 hours in church if I'm 3 times a week plus 2-hour activity. I've got school, 22,777 hours, so it leaves me 77,663 hours to be doing whatever it is that I do or be with my parents. You think, wow, that's a really big number. I mean, look at that. That is a huge slice of the pie, right? It does. It looks that way. And still, I started thinking about that 73%. And I started thinking about homework goes into that slice of the pie. That's why it's called homework. Do it at home. Or you're supposed to do it at home, right? Let me do homework at school. That's schoolwork. That's not homework. Okay, but homework. It's got sports in that slice of the pie. None of these are bad, okay? I'm not saying any of these things are bad. I'm just telling you what's in the slice of the pie. You got to eat sometime. That's in that slice of the pie, except for lunch at school, which I don't know how that goes. Video games. Y'all still play video games? Anybody play video games? Okay, some adult hands just went up, and it's okay. Cell phone usage. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. Let's just throw them all in there, right? Throw them all in there. So, but that's in that slice of the pie. And I just have one question about that. Do you own a cell phone, or does a cell phone own you? I mean, that's a good question, isn't it? Do you own a cell phone, or does a cell phone own you? Can you turn it off? Could you? I mean, I know you know how. It's got this button on the side, right? So, now I'm just going to tell you, it took me forever how to turn this phone off because it doesn't really have it. You got to hold 2 buttons together to turn it off. Now, is that not devious? So you have to hold 2 buttons at the same time to turn it off. And the question is not, do you know how to turn it off? If you turned it off, I'm just asking, if you turned it off, what would your mental state be while your phone is turned off? Would you be okay? Or would you think, oh man, I don't know if I missed something. I mean, or would you just be like on edge, trying to figure out what you missed, or did something happen, or did somebody send out a tweet, or did I miss a Snapchat? I mean, can you turn it off? And I got to be honest with you, I'm probably one of the least likely people here to be really good about turning it off because I don't ever turn mine off. I had a problem with it the other day, and when I called and I was trying to figure it out, they said, well, when's the last time you rebooted your phone? I'm like, you mean turn it off and turn it back on? I said, yeah. I said, well, probably never. No, not since I've had it. Time with friends. See, we'd like to look at that number and say, man, look at all that time parents have with their kids. But let's say you work and you don't get home till 6. I don't know what time bedtime are for kids anymore, because I don't have any. 10? Is that close? 10? 10? 9? Okay, 9. But just for the sake of argument, if it were 10, that'd be 4 hours a day, right? 4 hours a day. that you really get with your kids. I mean, the first part of the day, I mean, when you're getting up with them, you're trying to get them fed, get them out the door, get them dressed. Did you get your books? So you're shoveling them out the door, and then you get in, and you got 4 hours to spend with them. But let's be real honest, do we really spend that 4 hours with them? Because we got to get ball practice in there, right? And we got to get dinner in there somewhere, and we still got the homework that we got home from school and we didn't do, so we still got to get that in there somewhere. And so as a parent, you're working, trying to find that time, and you're thinking, I'm supposed to be teaching my child how to be godly. And you're looking at your slice of pie, 4% at church, 22% at school, 74% at home. And you're trying to be faithful to raising a godly child. You want to say, for this child I have prayed. And the point of this is simply to tell you, do you realize how much the children of this church need you to be praying for them, whether you are their physical parent or not? And that's what I love about what Cheryl did on the wall back there, because there's these cool little prayer cards, you know? And you go back there and you pick one of those up. Somebody at birth, this is something you pray for them. 1 and 2-year-olds, let me help tell you what to pray for them. And it goes through every year. And what difference would it make to a child in this church if you picked up these cards and you prayed for that child every day from the time that they were born into this church family until the time they graduated high school? Because our children struggle with self-worth and acceptance and image. They do. You know that they do because when you were their age, you struggled with it too. There was somebody who was more handsome, or there was somebody who was better at sports, or there was somebody who was smarter, or there was somebody who made fun of you, or someone who laughed at you. I have this group that I meet with sometimes, and we tell stories in there and we laugh, and we say, always laugh with, never at, and if you're not sure, ask. Am I laughing with you or am I laughing at you? And it's a good question. And we have kids who struggle with body image and intellectual abilities, and they're going through life. They're trying to live a godly life in an ungodly world, and they need you praying over them. I don't know what happened there, but you know, Satan's trying to convince our children that truth is relative, that there's no real absolutes, that there's not absolute truth, there's only relative truth. A world that would look at a text that we read and say, this is God's word, and they would look at that text and say, no, that's just a bunch of old writings, and that's not really the heart and the image of God that's reflected there. And I think it is the very image of God that's reflected in His word. But we have a world who tries to tell them that truth is relative, and if we were to stand in this church building and say, well, that world has no impact on our children, that does, that they're sitting in our schools. And I don't mean that as a condemnation against any kind of teacher, because the teachers that I know, I love and I trust immensely, but they don't control all the stuff that's in the textbook. They teach the stuff that's in the textbook. And Satan subtly tries to keep good influences away instead of surrounding us with bad influences. You see the difference in that? One is way too obvious. One is way too obvious. If Satan tries to just surround you with everything that's bad, your brain's going to click and you're going to say, oh, that's bad. But if he just tries to keep the good influence out so that you never get good influence, but you only get bad influence, then all of a sudden you find out that you've just kind of been lured into an entrapment that you didn't even know that it was coming. Like all of a sudden it's there and you don't even know how you got there, and you sure can't figure out how to get out. And it could be what somebody's talking about in school. It could be a movie that they've been to see. It could be language that they're using. It could be thousands of different things, right? And then we come to the conclusion that faith is the most important thing we can teach our children. Do you realize that? Faith is the most important thing, it's the most important thing you can help your child with. Everything else is temporary. Everything else is temporary. I have an uncle, and he was meeting with his financial advisor one time, and I was kind of told this story. I think it's true, but the financial advisor said something like, well, don't you want to leave your boys a lot of money? And he was like, no, they can work for theirs just like I had to work for mine. You want to teach your kids how to work? Yeah. You want to teach them how to be responsible? Yes. You want to have financial blessings? Sure you do. But you do realize that's temporary, right? It's temporary. You want your child to have a great education. It's a wonderful thing. But you do realize it's temporary, right? It's not forever. You want your children to have a good life, good spouse, a happy marriage if they decide to get married, or a happy single life if they decide to be single their own life. You want them to have a happy life. But you do realize that physical happiness is temporary. Temporary. If you were to go out, I'm just going to pick on Zach Smullen. Okay, Zach, can I pick on you? So Jennifer looks at Zach, and she says, I just love old Zach. And I've tried talking to Jim about this, and he's just not really on board, but I think I'm just going to give Zach $1 million. And Zach, son, she just writes you a check. $1 million. Jim's back there, no, don't write that check. $1 million. Boom, lays it in his hand. Now, could Zach's life be really blessed with that? Temporary. Temporary. What's going to happen to your money? Now, you want to spend it? Yeah, what's going to happen to it? What's going to happen to your money? I'm just going to start asking y'all questions. Y'all get the answers right. What's going to happen to your money? Okay, Jesus comes. What's going to happen when Jesus comes, Ryan? Go and burn everything up, right? What's going to happen to your money? Poof. All right, what's going to happen to your house? Oh, it's going away. It's going to disappear with the elements, right? What's going to happen to your car? I mean, some of you I just love your cars. That's great, but what's going to happen to your car? It's going to disappear with the elements. Right? It's going away. When it's all over, what is the one thing that's going to remain? Faith in your love in Jesus. The redemption that comes through the name of Jesus Christ. So you're looking at what are we going to pass to our children? Well, hopefully we're going to pass faith to our children because that is the most important thing that we have. And then we go back to Cheryl's little box. 936 weeks. 936 weeks to try to instill in them a foundation for faith in Jesus. Now, it doesn't stop at 936 weeks, right? But we're just talking about the foundations to start. Whew, any 12th graders in here? Ooh. Grant Christie. Whoo, baby. You want a 12th grader? But we don't have 52 weeks with him. How old are you?
How old?
Yeah, how old are you?
17.
Ooh, 17. When will you be 18?
In May.
In May. How many weeks is that? You have any idea? Okay, yeah. Well, while the sermon goes on, he's going to try to figure that out. So, but it's not 52, is it? Yeah, it's more closer, like probably 26. 26. Now you look at your slice of pie, right? Church. Yeah. You want to put that back up there? Do you realize how absolutely critical, if that is all the time that we have, that we make that time the absolute best that we can possibly make it? That is why every Bible class needs to be top-notch. That means that we don't come in here and coast, and we don't give we've got to have a Bible class, I guess we'll have a Bible class, right? Do you realize how important each moment you spend in worship to God really is? Even if you're not in the 936 weeks, I mean, even if you're in get an hour. For this church, for this child, I have prayed. Here's your challenge. Pray over a child. No, it doesn't matter which one. Pick one. Pick one. You know what? Pick all. Pick all the children. Pray over them. You think their parents would appreciate that? Man, you think as a parent, do you know how I felt when people have said to me, yeah, I prayed about your kid? Like, wow. You know that is the most important thing you can do? Is pray over your children. Sure has a little program going that people sign up to pray for kids. It's, honestly, I think it's incredible. I think it's incredible. I think it's incredible that we have people in this church who are praying over our children. But I think we need to all pray over our children. And I think every one of us needs to lift them up. I think every one of us needs to feel the responsibility of helping the children who are in this church have a foundation of Christian faith, that when they walk out into the world, that they know who God is. And they know what faith in Jesus is, and they know how to serve God no matter what they encounter in this world. So I'm just asking you, pray over our children. Because faith in Jesus is the most important thing we can teach our children. I guess I just asked, do you have it? Do you have it to pass on? Do you have faith in Jesus? Have you made that commitment to Jesus that you're going to serve him no matter what happens in this life? You know, have you gone through the process of confessing and repenting, being baptized, living a godly life, dedicating your life to Jesus? Because if you haven't done that, it doesn't matter if you're newborn or if you are 100 years old. Find the faith in Jesus. That is the most important thing in the world. If you need to respond in some way, we're going to ask you to do that while we stand and sing.
Time is filled with swift transition.